Why does it seem like there are so many correlations between Joe Biden, his administration, and the Chinese Communist Party? It's actually quite baffling, and it's something I've been struggling to figure out for a while. I don't know if that it's simply that Joe Biden himself has sold out his own personal interests to China, which we now know he has. However, it seems like a larger part of the Democratic Party as a whole. Now, who I'm talking about is this woman here, Linda Thomas Greenfield. Here's the article. Biden taps longtime diplomat jettisoned under Trump as U.S. ambassador to the UN. Now, first of all, I want to start off by saying I have some very, very serious grievances and personal moral problems with the United Nations as a whole. Predominantly, I have a problem with their duplicitous cooperation with the Chinese Communist Party and the doxing of CCP dissidents. We will get more to that later. However, let's get right into the article. Washington. Linda Thomas Greenfield grew up in Louisiana in a segregated town in which the KKK regularly would come on weekends and burn a cross in somebody's yard. She recounted in a TED Talk in 2018. Neither of her parents graduated high school. Attending Louisiana State University in the early 1970s, she encountered a hostile environment where she faced harassment and racism. She was forced out of, she was forced out at the outset of the Trump administration after a decades-long career at the State Department, which immediately to me raises flags. Why does any politician have a decades-long career in any department? It's actually probably good that she was fired. Now, Thomas Greenfield is poised to take on one of her country's most senior diplomatic jobs as President-elect Joe Biden, who is not actually the president-elect yet, Joe Biden's pick to the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. This is particularly concerning to me because what this indicates to me is this will be a return to the status quo. There will be more complicity in the CCP's agenda. There will be more complicity in bowing to the will of other nations. It will weaken us as a whole and in appearance on the world stage. In the years that I've worked in government, I'm always struck by how only in America we'd be where we are today, where life can be hard and cruel, but there's hope in the struggle. Amen. You know what? I'll give her credit where credit's due. That's a pretty wise statement. She said on Tuesday after being introduced by Biden at an event in Wilmington, Delaware. Current and former U.S. Foreign Service officers praised Thomas Greenfield as an ideal candidate to restore the standing of the U.S. and rebuild credibility at the venerable multilateral institution. So what they're talking about there when they say credibility at the venerable multilateral institution. Multilateralism is a process in which, mind you, dominated predominantly by the left, particularly the radical left. Multilateralism is an institution in which it essentially pertains to the governance with multiple governing bodies, usually two or three cooperating together. So the United Nations is a perfect example of that. There are a lot of different countries that partake in the United Nations politics, and that would be considered a multilateral institution. Now, the issue with it is that in many cases, in almost all cases, it essentially results in other countries taking advantage of us. Now, this isn't the case for most countries in the United Nations because most countries in the United Nations are not the United States. We are the best, we are the most powerful country in the world, we are the richest country in the world. And these are the exact reasons why they would buy us back into the United Nations. It buys back into the whole social justice issue of equitability and income inequality, and that as the most rich country in the world, we have a duty to take care of everyone else, and I don't believe that is right or should be the case. The Trump administration has severed ties with a number of key UN agencies over the past 4 years, cutting funding to and starting the process of withdrawing from the World Health Organization, for example, and leaving the Human Rights Council, which this is incredibly misleading here, the way they've worded this. They simply stated the Human Rights Council without telling you that the Human Rights Council is part of the United Nations, which is misleading at best and at worst, blatantly lying to the public. So good job, CNN, and frequently lambasted the organization. So let me tell you why this is a really, really big issue and why Trump has lambasted them. Right here. China now has a position on the United Nations Human Rights Council. This is as of, I believe it was April 4th, 2020. They now have a position on the United Nations Human Rights Council, which is hilarious. On top of that, the United Nations has been sanctioning the doxing of CCP dissidents directly to the Chinese government. They've been doing this reportedly for a while now, and essentially the United Nations is sanctioning this and are complicit in this. And essentially what is happening is they're giving this information to the CCP, knowing these are people who fled an oppressive, tyrannical, despotic regime that only seeks to suppress human rights. And essentially what's happening is a lot of these Uyghur dissidents of the CCP and other dissidents are seeking asylum and sanctum in various countries in Europe, and the United Nations is giving their information, their addresses and whereabouts directly to the Chinese Communist Party, who then use it to blackmail these people into either returning, or they use that information to hunt down their family members and torture and kill them. So, yeah, I kind of have a problem with the UN personally, and I also kind of see why Donald Trump also had an issue with the UN. The Foreign Service officers who spoke to CNN held the choice of a career diplomat for the role. She is a career diplomat. I get it. She's qualified. Blah 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 blah. I don't think anybody's arguing that. I'm sure she is plenty qualified. Oh, I love this part. Given the State's Department reputation for being pale, male, and Yale, what they're referring to is the distinct appearance of what they would say straight white males in the State Department. So obviously there's a lot of praise going around because she's black. There's quite a bit of history here on her background and how she grew up and stuff like that. I want to get down to the bottom here because this is really the important part, aside from what we already talked about with the UN. Many see her candidacy for the UN ambassador job, along with that of Antony Blinken for Secretary of State, as a move to return to a more traditional foreign policy approach. In her remarks Tuesday, she declared that America is back, multilateralism is back, diplomacy is back. Now let me tell you what that means. It sounds all great and fantastic and cupcakes and fucking unicorn dust. But let me tell you what's actually going on here. Multilateralism is back, America is back, and a traditional foreign policy approach. You know what that means? That means we're going to go back to the Obama-Biden era, where we're bombing children in Syria to secure pipelines because we don't want the Russians to have a monopoly on natural gas in Europe. It means that we're going to go back to bending the knee to the Chinese Communist Party while they eat our lunch. It means that we're going to go back to bowing to other countries and saying, yes, sir, please, sir, can I have some more, sir, when they demand that we defend their country while they don't have to worry about having a defense fund. I'm talking to you, Germany. That's what that means. This is what we're going back to. This is a problem, and it absolutely needs to change. That's pretty much it I wanted to talk about today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please do consider liking and subscribing. It does really, really help the channel out a lot, and it really helps the algorithm pick up my videos and distribute them to people who are interested in my content. It is completely free, and I would very, very greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Remember, gotta get that money.
Gigi, I've decided not to leave this town. Maybe I can stay and find some other nice people who will like me and accept me for who I am.
Trusting your spirit, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.